Gundogan, 34. Kyle Walker, 34. De Bruyne, 33. Bernardo Silva, he's just hit 30. These players, for a number of years, were City's best assets. But now they are starting to age and they're starting to pick up injuries and they can no longer rely on them to win them football matches. And ultimately, that is a big factor in City's downfall at the moment, in my opinion. And even the likes of Stones, Ake, Akanji, Grealish and Kovacic are either 30 or approaching that milestone. And a club of City's size and stature simply cannot afford to have almost half their squad at that age, especially if they want to retain the title. Yes, I understand 30 isn't what it used to be 20 years ago, but this select group of players have a lot of mileage within their legs, and as you can see, a lot of them are starting to pick up more and more injuries. But Harv, do you agree with my point, or do you think there's a bigger issue at hand?
I agree with your point, but I do think there is more to what you said in terms of City having not been good enough in the transfer market when it comes to replacing their key players who right now are underperforming, like you mentioned. Take Real Madrid, for example, in the 2018 final in Kiev, when they won the Champions League, they had a completely different squad, or almost a completely different squad, to the one in 2022, and they were able to replenish that squad perfectly. Apart from midfield, that was similar, but then midfield recently has changed and they've been able to replace their midfield very, very well, which, funny enough, is an issue that City currently have.
Exactly. Well, if you look at the 2024 final, players like Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde were featuring, whereas in the 2022 final in Paris, they had Casemiro, Modric and Kroos. And it's a perfect example because Real Madrid have been the masters for so many years at just replacing those big assets.
Well, that's what they've dominated for so long. And to relate it more to the Premier League, you look at Man United with Sir Alex Ferguson. He was a master at building multiple teams. You look at the 99 treble winning team and even the 07-08 season where they won the double. He was fantastic at building teams, and even Pep has done it himself with the Centurions. He was able to replace that well, but hasn't quite done it with this squad that he has right now. But another big issue that Pep has faced is the unfortunate injury of Rodri. He is out for the rest of the season, and
big miss.
Well, as we've seen, City certainly do miss him. Just won the Ballon d'Or, so clearly he's one of the best players in the world, and he is a catalyst in that City side. But Zach, do you think this is a simple case of City are missing their best player and one of the best players in the world, or is there more to this issue?
Well, I think he is the system at City, and I think this may sound harsh upon the rest of the squad, but I think Rodri's absence isn't necessarily the biggest issue within this case. I think it's more to the fact they don't have an able deputy.
That's true.
I think if they had someone like Zubimendi who could do the Rodri role, not to the same degree as Rodri, but to a decent level, I don't think City would have been as poor as they have been, because they would have still had someone operating in that position. But I still think he's a big miss nevertheless. Like you said, Ballon d'Or winner, such a key player, pops up with big goals as well. In those matches where City aren't necessarily performing, he'll pop up with a clutch goal and win the game.
Exactly. And I mean, I know the midfield was looking a little bit shaky when he was in it, but the fact that he's gone the midfield is a complete mess. It's just capitulated completely.
I think he was papering a lot of the cracks at the start of the season. I think the ageing squad and all the other issues that have been surrounding City was sort of covered by Rodri. He was that important and that vital to this squad. And another issue present for Pep Guardiola at the moment is his tactical game, because his tactics aren't working. I'm not saying it's the biggest issue, because I don't think it is, because I do think that it's more player related as opposed to a system. I think if he did have Liverpool's squad, for example, and this is no discredit to Arne Slot because he's been brilliant for us this season. But if Pep was manager of Liverpool, I still think they'd be top of the league or thereabouts.
I agree,
I think it's more due to players, but still, I do think Pep needs to adapt the system more.
He does.
Maybe just play a conventional back four more often to limit the counter-attacking threat that the opposition pose, because the opposition are constantly scoring goals against City in transition, and if you don't have Rodri in that midfield, be more assured at the back. Don't push as many players forward.
Exactly.
I know it's a big element to your system, but you have to compensate when your key players aren't playing and you don't have able deputies to replace them.
And we touched upon the injury to Rodri earlier, where obviously City do find themselves in sort of an injury crisis. Some would say yeah, some would say no. But do you think these unfortunate injuries are leading to, well, City's awful performances this season?
I think somewhat, because for example, De Bruyne, Rodri, Stones, Ake, Kovacic have missed large portions of the season. And they have been key assets for City over the past few years. But I don't really think you can pinpoint injuries as the biggest issue, because their squad hasn't been decimated with injuries. The 11 that they still field on the pitch should be performing better. I saw that the points per game since the 1st of November, I think it was, City a joint bottom with Southampton on like 0.57, I think.
And
don't quote me on that, but it's something along those lines.
Those players can't be putting up those kind of numbers, can they?
Exactly.
If they had like a mass injury spree,
like we had a couple of years ago when we had Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip out injured, playing Fabinho and Henderson at centre-back.
Exactly, I'd get it and I'd understand. I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But then you look at United with Ten Hag. Ten Hag lost his job. I know that United have had not injury issues this season, but the last couple of seasons, constant injury issues. But does he get any sympathy? No. So I don't think injuries is sort of a sympathy card that Pep can play. And the final issue that Pep has to contend with is the potential over-reliance on Erling Haaland, because often when we see Haaland play well, we see City play well.
Yeah.
But when Haaland underperforms, we see City replicate that. But how has this happened, Zach? And, well, is there even a way around this?
I think the obvious way around it is that the players around Erling Haaland have to step up.
Yeah.
Savinho, no goals for City this season. Doku, 9 goals in 61 appearances over a season and a half. Not good enough.
No, it's shocking.
Grealish, I don't think he scored for a year in the Premier League. Not good enough.
No.
And Kevin De Bruyne, he's not the player he once was. He's aging, he's getting injuries. Can you
Yeah.
rely on him to get you 10, 15 goals in
I
a
don't
league
think
season?
so.
No, probably not. Rodri, he'd probably get you 10 goals in a league season, and he scores clutch goals as well. He's injured.
Yeah.
But I do think the player who's underperforming the most and the one that's costing City the most at the moment in terms of goal scoring is Phil Foden.
Yeah.
Last season he scored almost 20 goals in the league on his own. A brilliant return for a player who often plays in midfield. But this season he scored 0 goals and we're in December. That is just not good enough at
it's
all.
shocking. It
I
is
know he had a
awful.
poor Euros and that's going to affect his confidence.
Yeah.
But you can't carry that for months going into the campaign.
I agree.
And like, look at Salah. He would sometimes have a bad AFCON and he'd have a bad few months at Liverpool, but he'd still score an assist.
Yeah.
Foden is literally producing nothing and offering virtually nothing to this City team.
Yeah.
And at the moment, he's 24 years of age. He's going to be 25 next year. You're starting to enter your peak, and you should be building upon your previous season.
Yeah,
where
not
you
doing
performed
what he's
well.
doing now.
No,
Shouldn't be doing that at all.
consistency is a fundamental in football. If
Agreed.
you want to be a top player, you have to be consistent.
Yeah, and he reminds me of a certain player on the other half of Manchester in Marcus Rashford, because they have very similar tendencies. I'm not saying Foden is the same level as Rashford, because obviously he is a better player overall. But in terms of their tendencies, you look at Rashford, he has a great season, but then an awful season, very, very inconsistent. And Foden's the exact same, right? We see Foden have his off times like now and like in the past, but then we see him perform out of his skin,
100%.
like last season where he got the Player of the Season award. So I think there's very similar tendencies there. And you look at Rashford, he's considered a good player, but not a top player.
Yeah.
And to be considered a top player,
100%,
like
yeah.
you said, you need to be consistent, and
Exactly.
Foden certainly needs to add that to his game.
But over to you. Yes, you think we wouldn't include you in the video, but we're doing that right now. What do you think is Pep's biggest issue at City at the moment? Comment down below if you think we've missed anything. And how do you think they address these issues moving forward? Can City rectify their poor form before it's too late? And can they actually win a trophy this season? Personally, I don't think they will, but comment down below your thoughts. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.